So what we need is to actually add the functionality to prevent that sliding from happening. So that's all going to be done in a method called void fix update. And in class, I mentioned that there's a difference between fix update and the regular update method, which we used up here. So void update pretty much does a check every frame. So you can pretty much say like less than every second, all of this information is going to be executed, which we need because we're going to be constantly moving our character around, and we need those coordinates within the x and the y to constantly be checked. Now, for fix update, it is being checked like every 3 or 4 frames, so it's like a delayed update. So we just want to check every once in a while for the velocity to make sure that our character is not sliding around. So we have a few variables up here. We have a vector 3 that I called ease velocity, and that's going to be relevant to the rigid body velocity. And then we have ease velocity on all 3 coordinates. We have it on the y, the z, and the x. Pretty much for the y and the z is always going to stay 0. We are setting the z to 0 automatically because we don't need it. However, for ease velocity.y, we want the y to always map to whatever y the character is in. And that's mostly relevant for when we jump, because obviously our y is going to be different when we jump. So we just want to make sure that our y is always being allocated to whatever value the game is running. And what we are going to be checking for is on the z. And we're going to be multiplying it by 0.75f. It's a float. That's why it has an f at the end. This is a shortcut right here, this multiply equals to. It's similar to when you type in plus equals to, which is addition, or minus equals to, which is, minus equals to, which is subtraction. So it's just a shorthand. But essentially what I am saying is, I'm just going to copy this. This is essentially what I'm saying, that ease velocity.x times 0.75. So instead of actually writing all this stuff down, instead of having ease velocity.x equals to its own variable times 0.75, I'm just shorthand writing it so that the variable here is going to be multiplied by this number. So that's what that means. Fairly straightforward. So here we have a few if conditionals. So if we are grounded, we're going to set the rigid body's velocity to the ease velocity, which is rigid body.velocity. So if we're grounded, we're not going to be moving at all. And then these other 2 conditionals right here are going to check for our max speed in the positive direction if it's greater than, or if it's less than and it's negative. So we're checking going to the right and we're checking going to the left. And we're just capping that maximum speed by whatever number we had assigned up above, which was nothing up here. So you actually can set that max speed up within the editor. So if you go to the editor and you save the script and you have this in here, you can put like 3. And then you can just move it around depending on how you want your character to move. Awesome. So that's what that stuff means. Make sure that you close the curly bracket on fix update so that you close all of the functions within. And again, I just copied and pasted all of this code that I commented from the standard character controller that we had been editing. Again, be very mindful and careful when you do that. Okay, so I'm just going to save that. So my setup here may look a little bit different than yours. Like all I did was go to Window Console, and then this will pop up somewhere. And I just put it right next to the projects tab so that I could see any errors. Okay, so I'm going to save it. And the next thing that we need is to add a ground check game object. So if you play it right now, this shouldn't work properly because we're not checking if it's grounded. So the Unity doesn't know what animation to play. It doesn't know what's going on because our character is not grounded. So we can move, but as you see, it's not playing things properly. It's not allowing us to jump because it's not checking for the ground. And it's not changing the animations because it doesn't know what the ground is. So that is also very easy. So with the custom alien game object highlighted, we are going to create an empty object right within it. Something that I mentioned in class was that when you group things together and this arrow pops up and you have things underneath, the objects inside are called children. And the children do not have the components that the parents do. So the parent is the one that contains all the objects underneath. This parent, our custom alien, has all the components that we need for it to move. However, this new object that we are going to call ground check. Oops. Wish I knew how to spell. Alright. And as you can see here, this ground check game object does not have any of those components, even though it's attached to the custom alien. So be mindful when you're attaching things together, especially obstacles and enemies. If you're clunking them all together and the parent is the one that has the script, none of the other stuff is going to work. So just be very mindful that you're doing that. Also, something that I forgot was to tag the custom character controller as player. So we want to be able to do that, or else the coin collection and the damage stuff is not going to work. Okay, so in our ground check, the only thing that we need here is a box collider. And this box collider needs to just be right underneath our player, and it can be smaller. So I'm going to do that. Let's make it like that big is good. And just make sure that it's right underneath him. So if you zoom in all the way, I just want to make sure that they are both relatively close to each other. So right now my collider is going like inside the actual collider of my character. So I'm just going to offset it within here on the Y. Right there is good. So they're right on top of each other. That's what you want. Cool. All right. And then for this ground check game object, we want to attach a script called ground check. So in your scripts folder, just create a new C# script called ground check, no spaces, and then attach it to the ground game object. And if we open it, it's very simple. Make sure that you are using these 3 lines to look for the backend. What is this? This file. I don't understand what that means, but okay. And it's not letting me. All right. Whatever. Yeah, so make sure these 3 lines are up there. And the only variable that we are going to declare is going to be a private custom character controller that we are going to name character. And that is essentially our script, which is right here. We just want access to it. So in the void start function, I called the character script by looking for a game object.get component in parent of custom character controller. And we can do that because, like I said before, we attach the ground check to the custom alien. So with Unity is looking for the parent, which is the Alien controller itself, and scrobbling through the components and looking for the script called custom character controller. That's what this line does. And here I just created 3 methods that are already embedded in Unity. One called onTriggerEnter2D, which we have used previously, and 2 new ones, onTriggerStay2D and onTriggerExit2D. And that's just going to be checking our ground if we are colliding with the ground game object, if we are staying within it, and if we are exiting it. And then we just tell the character to either be grounded or not, depending on those collisions. So if it's entering the trigger, it's going to be true. If it's staying within the trigger, it's going to be true. And if the character leaves the trigger, it's going to be false. And that's going to allow us to jump. So let's save all that. And one more thing about the ground check game objects. The box collider. Oh, this is not box collider 2D. Okay. Make sure that it's a box collider 2D. And make sure that it is triggered. If it's not triggered, it's not going to work. So I'm just going to save all of that. And now when we play, we are idle. We're not doing that weird jump animation first. And we should be able to jump. Cool. Now, like I said in class, this character controller is not perfect. You're going to have to fiddle around with it so that it's what you want it to be. But essentially, I'm going to make these changes while the game is running, so that I can see for myself in real time what the best numbers are. So the first thing that I started fiddling around with was a jump force. So right now it's 150. Let's see in 300. Cool. So now we can jump a bit higher. Another thing that you can check for is the mass of your character. So right now it's 1. If I do 2, it means that it's just gonna weigh more. So when I jump, it'll fall faster because it weighs more. So those are the things that you want to debug for yourself until you get like the right, I guess the right numbers, the right combination that you want for your game. I'm actually going to debug myself probably in another video, because as you can see right now, that jump animation is not working. It only works sometimes. So it worked here. That's so weird. But it didn't work over here as well. So I'm going to debug myself to see what's up with this stuff. And I will make another video to see what I found.